So I want you to think about your audience like a dartboard. Okay. And sure, there's lots of spaces on the dartboard that you can throw that dart at and still get points. Where do you get the most points?
In the middle.
So you're shooting for the bullseye. When you're shooting for the bullseye, it means that if you go a little bit astray, you're still within the points getting on the dartboard. So if we create the profile and it helps you to build your audience of that kind of people, you're only doing that kind of superficially, right? Like you're looking at people's profiles, you're seeing some things that they said. You don't really know with absolute certainty when you're doing that audience building stuff. You don't know with absolute certainty that they are in need of you.
Right.
But they might know somebody. So when I'm thinking about doing the ideal client profile, I'm thinking about who am I going looking for and who am I talking to? Because when I have a person in mind that I'm speaking to, like Pepsi, for example, Pepsi could talk to anybody in the world. Pepsi talks to 23-year-old men.
Okay.
Pepsi talks to 23-year-old men who play sport. And in fact, if I'm not mistaken, they actually pick the sport.
Really?
Yeah. And then
that's so interesting.
And then all of their ads are around the lifestyle that 23-year-old sports-minded guy wants. So it's the fun times with friends, it's the time at the beach with the surfboards, it's the going to the party, it's the Jays game. Sorry, Jays are a Canadian baseball team.
That's okay.
Okay. So all of their ad is targeting the lifestyle that 23-year-old guy wants. They're speaking to what he desires. So my reason for suggesting, and I think this is really why anybody that's doing any kind of marketing training is saying, pick a person, because once you've picked that person, it doesn't mean that the others aren't going to be possible customers. But as you start talking to the challenges, I think we even decided that it wasn't like in terms of the circumstances. In terms of the circumstances, I think we even talked about it's not like in my case where it was a heart attack on the way to work and he was dead before the end of the day. Suddenly. We were talking about how, no, this is long, drawn out illness, right? So that the mourning is happening before, because there's a different quality to that. And so now you're speaking to mom who has young children, who has a spouse that had a long, drawn out illness that ultimately led, unfortunately, to passing. And you even put up something earlier today that I was like, here we go. There we go. And I even got chills as I read it. But it kind of speaks to that notion that grief is, I love that you said, and I even put a comment on there, I agree. Why is this taboo? It happens to all of us. Death happens to all of us. We need to start having conversations about it. We really. Another element of it could be, so imagine you're always speaking to the wife. If the wife is the center, the wife, right? The wife is the center, right? She's that centerpiece. That's who we're speaking to. We've got late husband. I don't know if you experienced this. I don't talk about Alan in this house.
At all?
Nope. Very, very rarely, because of how it makes Martin feel.
Okay. So that's a choice that you've made.
Absolutely.
We talk about Jamie all the time.
But it's not a healthy choice.
Yeah. We talk about Jamie all the time.
That's awesome. Yeah. I don't know if it's the drug addict element. I don't know if it's the sudden element. I don't know if it's the dissociation my children experienced afterward. I don't know what the reason is, but for some reason in our house, my instincts scream at me, don't talk about them. And when you do, right over it. So that in itself could be something that could be spoken to. It's not even grief extends. So all I'm saying is if the wife is the center part of the whole thing, that it's specifically the wife, now you can speak to all of these other little things that the wife has experienced. Why not talk about how healthy this is in your house? And you were talking with somebody today that it's not like that.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
right.
There's ways to add these little nuances that still make people who aren't in that specific situation go, that's interesting. I know somebody like that.
Yeah.
And it's because they say, I know somebody that's going through that. I know somebody who experienced that. I know somebody who could use this. Are you kidding me? Since you and I talked, I got like 5 people on my list. I'm like, so how do I direct them to Heather? Because they are clearly struggling. They are not coping. And some of them, it's been years.
Yeah.
This is not restricted to the 2 years after the fact. This is not restricted to the 1 year after the fact.
No.
My goodness, this could be so far.
Mm-hmm.
So that's my reason for suggesting the ideal client, is because although you can serve all the spots around it, if you're shooting for this,
oh my gosh, you are so much like me. It is scary. I mean, scary. Wow.
So you're shooting for the center.
Right.
But when you're shooting for the center and you've got a margin of error, you're still on the board.
Right.
And I think that's my reason for suggesting the ideal client profile more than all the other, we all have to have an ideal client. But I think the other thing as well is it helps you to kind of think through, what are some of the things that she might be saying? What are some of the things she might be doing that actually show she won't get as much benefit out of this? She's already further along. So it's also about defining, so what kinds of things are people saying? It makes it easier for you to go, there's an ideal client. There's a non-ideal client. I'm ready. I can afford it. And I have the problem.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the 3 things we're really looking for. So what are the things that indicate I'm ready? What are the things that I'm saying to myself? And I think that's really the big thing. So whether or not she's got, yes, it could be a man. It could be a widower that has children, right? It could be a man whose wife has actually passed away.
Right. Right.
Absolutely, it could. So it could be parents. You know, what's the language to describe that? It's not post-death.
Keep talking. Keep talking.
Okay. So when we are talking about that, okay, so now that they have, now that the person has died, what does that make us? So if we don't say widow and widower anymore, which my understanding is we don't say that anymore.
Really?
Am I wrong?
I still say it.
I help widows and widowers?
Yeah, I still say it.
Okay. Perfect. I help widows and widowers with small children. I help widows and widowers I help parents who've lost their spouse, parents with lost small children, parents with school-age children.
Yeah.
It could be parents. I help parents who've lost their spouse, even.
Okay.
It could even be that. So like, it really, in the beginning, it's how do we just kind of like, what's the shared experience that you've got, the parenting? So what are some of the problems that a parent has that we can talk to that are unique to a parent who's lost their spouse? Is it about the kids or is it about the loneliness?
Well,